All right, looks like we are recording.
All right, and we can always trim off the front bit if we want to.
Yes, we can.
We're not, so.
Or not.
Okay. Let's introduce our guest, shall we?
Absolutely. This is Amie Schultz. She is the librarian at the Tom Burnett
Memorial
Library. Just down the street from here.
Yeah. 2 blocks that way.
Mm-hmm.
Almost walking distance, except it's dark outside.
Right.
I
Yes.
can't believe how early it's getting dark. This is the problem with December.
Yes.
Is it's really, really dark.
Yes.
Yes.
And I didn't put the chickens in before I came over here, so I'm going to have to put the chickens in their coop when I get home. But
Small town life.
yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, it's kind of nice because right here I'm in town because I'm only a block from the library.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I looked up the regulations before I got chickens because the chickens were kind of a thing that happened, not unplanned, but just they weren't something I had considered but we did look up the regulations and I could have up to 6 hens. I have 4, no roosters. Now, I know from Ian and Rita having a neighbor with a rooster, or maybe more than one rooster, that not everybody in town complies with regulations.
That is correct.
But it is nice to have a small town where things like that are okay to do.
Yeah, it is.
So.
It's nice. We had a lady that worked for us at the library that had a whole menagerie in her backyard. So.
Yeah, Dorothy and Peter are out over towards the edge of town,
Mm-hmm.
and their neighbor has goats in a small suburban backyard.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, and it's very fun to go over and sit on the back porch and have a drink and hear bah. It's like, and when they got the goats, that was my first introduction. I'm like, you didn't put anything in this, right? It's like, oh no, the neighbor's got goats. I'm like, oh, is this the same neighbor with chickens?
There was a
No,
guy down
different
the
neighbor.
Different neighbor.
There was a guy down the road from us one time that had a calf in his backyard for a while until the city found out. I mean,
Oh.
it was.
But it had to go.
It was the strangest thing to it be in. I mean, we live in a cul-de-sac, and
Uh-huh.
be in the cul-de-sac and hear
Yeah, a calf.
calf.
Yeah,
Was
I
some
know.
strange moments.
You can keep a cow on a fairly small amount of land, but by fairly small, I mean an acre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Not a backyard.
that's something you don't see behind a privacy fence very often.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I don't peek behind the privacy fences because then there's always something like, I don't want to
No.
know.
Yeah,
No, I don't want to
exactly.
know.
They
No.
exist for a reason.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Oh. But part of the reason we wanted to talk to you is actually related to being the librarian for a tiny town. And not necessarily the quirkiness that goes along with small town life. But you came to my attention in particular because of the Haunted Library anthologies and a very unorthodox fundraiser.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear how that came about from your side, because I got Jim Curtis told me about it and basically told me I was writing a story for it.
Yeah.
Which I had no objection to. I love the concept.
And I love Jim's though.
But I'm
Thank you,
curious
Jim.
how it got started for you.
Well, we had Alyssa actually and I had talked
Okay.
about it, and maybe Kathy too. Alyssa and Kathy are both writers, and I both work at the library. And we had tossed around an idea when I think Ian and Jim were both talking about other anthologies, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do something like that? I mean, what better fundraiser for the library than a book?
Right. Yeah.
So we tossed the idea around and ran it by Jim because Jim's the man, and and he helped us organize it, put it together, and came up with it. And Haunted Library because that's where we work. Haunted Library.
Yep. Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know there was Haunted Library 1 and 2, and then
Because we had so many submissions.
Yes. Yes. Which Raconteur Press has definitely done that same model of look at all these wonderful stories. Let's do more.
Right.
Yep. It was
great.
It was a
is.
great model. I was one of the things like, well, why wouldn't we? Like, we have print limitations for what's affordable, but we can
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
why not, right?
Absolutely. You have the material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I know that those sold reasonably well, and you were able to bring some money into the
Yeah,
library.
we
with
raised
them.
over $1,500 for the library with
Excellent.
those anthologies,
Wonderful.
which was
Yeah.
just such a blessing because we are a small library. We have
Mhm.
a small budget,
Yeah.
and we're very limited to what we can do from the city's funding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And
anytime we can add to that, it's a
Yeah.
good thing.
right, because I know I worked in a small town library in New England. Very different system, I'm sure, for how it was run. But I think the universal there is that you are always going to be accountable to the taxpayers through
Absolutely.
the town council or however it works here.
Mhm.
And that was something that we always had to be conscious of as a library there.
Right.
And when gifts are given to the library bequests, so the library where I worked up there, we had a bequest that came in with a very specific purpose attached to it. So we had to use that money for, right, and that one was particularly given to, they wanted to teach computer literacy.
Oh.
So we actually used it to buy laptops and do classes in internet safety and basic computing. So it was a really great bequest
Yeah.
and a thing for the library to be able to do. But oftentimes when you get money in like that, it's got ties.
Yes.
And which isn't
Absolutely.
bad, just it means that you have to get creative.
Right.
Which you did.
Right, which is, and we do a lot of different things at the library. So
Mhm.
to have anything that's a donation that's given to us without those specific rules applied,
Yeah.
makes it much easier when you can use it for programs and
Yes.
materials, because
Yes.
we don't have a big materials budget even. So
No.
being able to have a little more money to buy books is
Mhm.
always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I know you guys support local authors.
Yes.
Yes, which we deeply appreciate.
Yes.
But local authors always also support the library, so we
Mhm.
appreciate that. It's a
We-
give and take.
We do our best.
Actually, I had a question for you about that too.
Yes.
We had talked about, because I had donated a couple of children's books, and I
Mhm.
am more than willing and happy to do story time with when things, because I know right now the library is under repairs.
Yes. Someday it will be whole again.
Oh no. Oh, but would for the other books, would other events with local authors doing kind of public outreach stuff, would that help the library at all? So,
I think anything, yes.
Yeah.
Anything that we can do to get people in the doors
Mhm.
is a good thing.
Yeah, because I know that was, again, I'm like, this is all resonating with stuff that I've done before.
Right.
So I think that if we're able to publicize and do a reading or something like
I think
that
that'd
at the
be
library.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to sometimes tie things in with the schools too.
Yes.
Just because a lot of this always shocks me, but there's been times that I've gone to the high school library to do library
Mhm.
cards before the end of the school year or whatever, and I've had students say, "I didn't even know we had a library in Iowa Park."
Just down the road. Like,
Yeah.
how do you?
Well,
How do you miss it?
I think kids these days are overbooked, and there's a lot more emphasis put on sports, which nothing wrong with sports and physical education. It's important, but knowing that they have a library there as a resource,
Right.
and then showing them what resources they can find with the library, because I don't know, because I will admit I haven't been taking advantage of the library as much because I haven't needed it as much
Sure.
in this season of life.
Right.
But so I don't know what all you offer.
Well, we have a lot of electronic databases available, just like what they can access when they get in college.
Mhm.
The same kind of databases available
Yeah.
through the library, and they have that available through the school itself
Mhm.
also. I think ours might just be a little bit bigger.
Right, and you'd
Um,
be available at times when they wouldn't be able to be
Right.
accessing it at school, or
Right.
or if the school library only has a limited number of slots, that would give them, if they're doing research and whatnot, to be able to come to you
Yeah,
for.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We may not have the physical books as much anymore, but
Yeah.
and part of the reason for that too, I think, is that everything changes so fast.
Yes.
And those kind of books are very expensive.
Yes.
And so it would be very hard for us to maintain
Up to date.
information.
Yeah, that kind
so
of
the database is better.
Right. That kind of publishing model went to the subscription model very early. And it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as buying the books and then the updates over and over and over again.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, that's one of those things that getting kids involved is always a challenge, especially the older they get, when they get into their teens.
Absolutely. So when I first started at the library, we had my oldest son was in junior high when I first started at the library. And his friends became my summer reading volunteers, and they were just at the library all the time, all summer long, all through the school year, and then they got in high school. And after about their freshman year,
nothing. Yeah.
They're not available anymore.
Right. Yeah, because
So.
again, kids are so booked solid with stuff these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They just don't have time.
Yeah.
I turned 16 and applied at my local library and worked there for 2.5 years until I left for college,
Yeah.
which was so much fun. I was Paige. So
Yes.
when I got bigger, I could be a pamphlet. That was a lot of fun, and it was I made more money with them for giving my fines than than my page.
I actually understand that.
It's one of those things that I always wanted to work in a library, and then I wound up working in one kind of by accident and part-time, but I became a children's librarian because the director of the library wandered in one day and said, "Cedar, you have children, you get to do the children's librarian." Well, it was more than that. He was being funny, but I had done summer reading programs for 10, 12 years before that, so he knew I had the experience to be able to pick up and do the programming for the library.
Yeah.
And then he challenged me to do a successful teen program because they'd never had a successful teen program, and I did that. So
you're a miracle worker is what you're telling me, because that's a very difficult thing to do.
What it was I had kids, so I was kind of tapped into what kids were into at that point.
Right.
And I took that and I did CSI Samberton, which is the name of the little town.
Oh, okay.
And I did a science and forensics based teen program.
Oh,
and
that's
they
awesome.
loved that.
Yeah.
And I had a forensic technician come in and do a talk, and we went to the town cemetery that was just a couple blocks from the library, and we did rubbings and talked about the symbolisms, and also tracked the one of the yellow fever epidemics by the death dates. And so yeah, no, absolutely. And I will be happy to help with stuff like this, because and this is one of the things that, as we're doing the interview, I'd like to encourage people that are watching us to get involved with your local library, because this is, as an author, it's special to me just in general but training up the new generation of readers and getting them connected with the library and with books is important to me, and this is part of how you do it, is you teach them that the library exists.
Exactly. Get them in the door. Get them in the door.
Oh, one of the things I've considered doing, and have actually and floated. There's a sci-fi fantasy book club at the Wichita Falls Public Library. I went to their inaugural. This is the first book that we're doing. I said, I was actually mentioned that we publish a lot of sci-fi and fantasy anthologies, and that I write sci-fi. And I said, I'm actually considering doing like one of our a postcard workshop, and I would aim it at like kids, or like the middle school, high schoolers, so they can do the 50-word challenge. It'd be short, easy to do in like an hour-long workshop. And she's like, "Oh," you kind of perked up, and I'm like, so like we could totally like talk to the high schoolers down the road, and let them come be our guinea pigs, and
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
that'd be a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
can use the library here as a test bed for workshops.
I volunteer the library.
Thank you.
Whatever you need, I'm at your disposal.
Because it seems like something that would be a lot of fun to do,
Right.
but it'd have to be. It's something I really do have to develop, and just haven't
Yeah.
had the people for it. So.
Yeah,
I think
and
that'd be great.
trying it out on an actual audience is important. I mean, this was, for years, I wrote and built and designed shows for literacy, generally comedy magic shows, because that's what my ex did, and we ran a business together. But I was the one that set everything up behind the scenes. But until you actually hit that first audience of the season, you didn't know.
Right.
Because you can rehearse all you want, but until you get the feedback from the audience and you're doing it live, it's you can't really refine and get it down solid. And then it's usually 3 or 4 performances before you really can start banging onto the right timing, the right beats, and everything. So
That makes sense.
so yeah, having a test bed is useful. And I know you do creative things because you created books to fill something that you couldn't come up with on your own for the library.
Yeah, well, I do story time obviously at the library, and we've reformatted our story time so that, because what happened was COVID,
Yeah.
and then we didn't have story time in person for a number of years. So when we
Right.
brought it back, my story time kids were much younger than what I've had in the past. So it was more of a toddler
Okay.
time than
Yeah.
preschool.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my kids that come to story time now are like 2.
Oh wow, that is very
Yeah,
small
so
for
2, 3. So they're
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
And so I restructured story time, so we do the same book for a whole month. And we have an activity that we do while we're doing the book. And I had this picture in my mind of what one of the parents had mentioned they were teaching shapes to their child, and they were not grasping the concept. And so I thought, well, why don't we do fall shapes? And I can go to the Dollar Tree, because I get a lot of things at the Dollar Tree, and get baskets and put things that are from fall shapes, like a rectangle would be a bale of hay, or a pumpkin for the circle, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
all of these things that they can hold in their hands while we're reading the book. But I couldn't find a book that went with that, that had the fall shapes that I wanted, so I wrote one.
Yeah.
So
And I
like,
think
here we go.
That's brilliant.
It is very awesome.
And it was fun, and I did it quickly, so it's not the greatest book I've ever written, but it worked for story time.
There is something though to there is a need. I'm going to create something that fills the need, and if you take too much time trying to polish it and make it perfect, then sometimes you lose the moment of what you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
So
that's what I do. Whenever I see a need, it's for the movie Robots. See a need, fill a need.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the motto of my life. So
Yeah.
it works well when you work at the library and you have to find needs within the community that need to be met. So
Mhm. So how long have you worked at the library?
this year in March will be 12 years.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
prior to that, I was 11 years at the police department. So
Okay, so you went from police department to the library.
yes.
What was that like?
It was really, really strange because I went from, it was a great move for me.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I can kind of see that.
I went from being in a place where, in an atmosphere that's very stressful and negative all the time, to being somewhere where it's the people that come in because they want to see you and not because
Yeah.
there's some kind of emergency going on, and a very open and creative environment for me. And I found out that I'm a creative person, which I really didn't know up until then.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. Like, so when people started asking about doing craft classes and stuff, I started watching YouTube videos and teaching myself, because we couldn't afford a instructor
Right.
to come in and do it. So I've learned to do a lot of things so that I can teach classes.
I know. I'm familiar with this.
Yeah, so am I. I know, and again, I keep going back to you, but we had a fiber arts group that would meet at the library because we had the community room upstairs. There's so many parallels. It's just, but we had the community room upstairs, and we had multiple different groups that would meet up there and do whatever. We had like the fiber arts people, and they had a standing invitation to anybody that wanted to learn to knit or crochet or
Right.
whatever. could join them and they would teach. And it was, I mean, a lot of retired folks. And we also had the watercolor group, the same thing. And I sat with them a few times, and they would teach me things. And we had a lady that did yoga. So Sandbridge, New Hampshire is this little rural New England town with an ashram. And so it's a full-on guru, vegan,
Nice.
new age. And it was just weird but wonderful. And one of the ladies from the ashram would come and do yoga upstairs at the library.
That's a great thing, though.
That's wonderful.
Offer that. Yeah.
And that was, I mean, it was, I don't think she was a yoga teacher at the time. Later on, she was doing it professionally. But she would volunteer and she'd come in and do a yoga class once a week at the library.
That's fantastic.
So,
I think we can find someone to do Tai Chi like that.
yeah.
I'd love to do Tai Chi.
Right?
Yeah, we were just talking about this because my husband has heart issues, so he can't do anything that's really exerting him. And he was saying that Tai Chi would be a good thing to do because it's just very calm and flowing, and he needs... Yoga might be too much down on the floor getting back up for him, but Tai Chi is usually a standing and moving. So we may have to see what we can do about that.
I looked into becoming a Tai Chi instructor. This is supposed to be this crazy lady that will learn anything just so I can teach it.
We all do this.
I'm sitting here going,
yes.
I wonder if there's a community.
But I couldn't figure it out. Yeah, like I couldn't find a place nearby where I could do it. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, man, this is really disappointing.
We'll have to look into it and find out. So,
Yeah.
Because I'm going to try. There's a yoga class where I'm going to try, but with my shoulder, I may not be able to do the pushing off the
See,
ground and all that.
I can't do yoga because of my shoulder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like, okay, if the yoga doesn't work out, I might have to go find a Tai Chi place and learn how to do this and start my own group.
Well, I will join your group.
So there you go.
So you have 3 members right
There
here
you
that
go.
will do
There we go.
Tai Chi together.
and possibly one curmudgeon. And the mouse has escaped.
Thank you.
It's a cute mouse.
It's a cute mouse. It's a little tiny mouse.
Yeah,
it's easy to see in a box.
But I think the thing about being creative and making your own resources, I mean, I know I've had to do that because you don't always have access to the funds or other people that can do whatever it is that you want to do. So sometimes you just have to figure it out yourself.
And not be afraid to ask people if you find people that can do it. Because I'm not afraid to say, so do you want to teach a class? That is amazing. Do you want to teach a class?
Yeah.
I do that often with people because and sometimes people think I'm joking, but I'm not.
No.
Not at all.
It gives you more resources for the library and what you do for the community. But also a lot of people maybe haven't thought about trying to do that, or they don't want to do it as a business. They'd rather just do it as a hobby. But teaching a skill is a really good way of cementing your own learning. And I've always gone by the see one, do one, teach one method for really learning how to do something quite well. Because once you have students asking you questions that you didn't think of yourself, suddenly you have to know how to explain how to do this.
I remember my mom, who is not an artist, and I always laugh when I say that because she has maintained for 60 years now that she's not an artist. And she wanted a painting that matched her decor in her living room. She just repainted all the walls because she got bored. This might sound familiar. Couldn't find one that she liked, and so she went and made one. And then she changed her decor again, about 5 or 6 years later. No, this one was, and it still worked. And then she changed it again 5 years after that, and it still worked. Then she changed it again 5 years after that, and the painting doesn't work. So she painted over it with all new stuff because it wasn't art to her. It was something to match her decor. But it met a need that she and she does craft shows every year, and she doesn't like doing the same craft every year, but that's how she gets her Christmas money. She does craft shows. And so she'll go learn a new craft so she can get just good enough to make Christmas money at the craft shows, and then never does it again.
Wow. I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Which makes me crazy.
I mean, I'm thinking about how many different styles of crafts are stashed in my craft closet.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing. Like, I'm always doing stuff because I can't read in a car. I'm a big reader, obviously. But I can't read in a car. It makes me car sick.
Yeah.
So I craft
Yep.
in lieu of reading.
I've never tried to craft in the car.
I've knitted. I've done. I was knitting during spring break one year. That was my thing in the car, and I didn't move my stuff. I fell right out of my car when we stopped. Oh, like face first. No, feet were in the car, body on the ground.
Oh, no.
And my husband didn't even know what happened. My kids were like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, are you okay?" My husband's like, "What's the matter with you? Get up off the floor."
Oops.
Oops. Yeah.
But yeah, so crafting can be dangerous.
It can be. It can be.
Sorry.
Oh no,
I digress.
I'm thinking about the number of times I've burned myself on hot glue. Crafting can be dangerous.
Oh crap! Why am I bleeding?
Exactly.
This is why, even though I've done jewelry making, I've never been tempted to try and do anything with hot work of like brazing or soldering because I would burn myself.
It's like
Yeah.
I have this vision of someday like making like little dragons out of like expended bullets. Like
Oh, cute.
like
yeah.
right, that would be so much fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I know myself.
This would end badly.
This would end very badly. But I fell getting into and out of the shower the other day. Like
I knew you were my people.
like if I need to do anything that requires me to be graceful, nah.
You were fine scrambling around in the dirt yesterday. We went down to Mineral Wells Fossil Park,
Oh, okay.
and
was fun.
the Master Naturalists did their public hike. We went
Oh,
down
okay.
there, and I took Kortnee along, and Julie Pascal, and I don't think you've met yet, but she's a geologist. She just moved to town from
fun.
New Mexico.
That's interesting.
So I figured fossil dig, and I will take people that I know that are interested in dinosaurs and rocks, and we had a lot of fun down there. It was, I mean, it was,
Sounds like fun.
yeah. I found a trilobite, which I was so excited about because I've always wanted to find one. But yeah, that was a really fun expedition. But it was kind of steep banks, and we're scrambling around on those, and I'm keeping an eye on her because I knew she'd fallen. So I was
Well,
like,
'cause I would sit and I would like dig in the stuff, and I'd scoot over and I'd dig in the stuff, and like, okay, I want to move over there now. Okay, how am I getting down?
yes.
And before I stood up, I would have my path down the hill marked out. So like, all right, I know where I'm going, so I don't hurt myself.
But it was fun because we got to dig around in the dirt and find all these little tiny seashells, fossilized seashells.
Yeah, that's
It's
fun.
like beach combing, but very dry and dusty.
Yeah.
It was so we were doing our introductions with the Master Naturalists, and like, oh, I do this and I do this, and you know, Julie's a geologist and you're a chemist. And I'm like, I like dinosaurs. I am not scientific in any way. I'm just here to play in the dirt.
But you put a dinosaur joke in every one of your books.
I do.
Because they're fun. When I had my T-shirt, the dinosaurs can't clap because they're extinct. Because why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a good expedition. We're going to have to do that again sometime.
Yes.
Because we could have spent a lot longer there, but it's Saturday and we had other things to do, so we had to get back here.
Yeah.
But and I was very happy that you were able to give us some time. I appreciate that because I know your life is busy too. So
It's been a little crazy.
yeah. Well,
This- December's insane anyway.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Everybody's insane in December.
Mhm.
And to have
But then
construction
there's a-
going on at the
yeah.
library in the middle of the insane months is
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's been, but you know, we're just waiting on lights. Once we get the lights in,
Oh, okay.
we'll reassemble. It's
excellent.
just been-
Excellent.
Yeah, the ceiling is in. It's just the
Good.
lights, the
Yeah.
light fixtures that we're waiting on now. So
Mhm.
as long as whenever we can get that electrician out there.
Yep. Yeah, and that's always a thing of it's hard to try and schedule working on the house. I've got some stuff that needs to get done and I'm kind of eyeballing it, going, well, how badly does it need to get done, and can I do it myself?
Right.
So, but with the library, it's not an option of DIY.
No, not in this case, for sure, no. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's the third ceiling to fall in at the library.
But this is a trend that maybe we should figure out what the root cause is.
Well, the other two, it was years ago when the roof was leaking and it was water.
Yeah, that
This
would
one is the nails let go finally, and our 100-year-old plaster. That's what it is.
Yep. Yeah, which might actually be related to the water. It just took them a long time to get to the point where they weren't holding any longer. Yeah. Yeah. So.
But now it's replaced, and it'll last another 100 years, and we hope.
So the library.
Not your problem if it doesn't.
It's only my problem for the next maybe 20.
I should explain to our viewers that the library in this case is a converted house.
Correct.
As a lot of small town libraries are, unless the small town was lucky enough to get a Carnegie library, but that's a whole other thing.
Right.
Some of those are works of art in and of themselves. The problem is that they're tiny, and most libraries have outgrown them.
Yes.
So, and even in our case, I don't know if the library has approached outgrowing the building.
We could very easily outgrow the building. We are keeping ourselves contained within it at this point.
Yeah.
Just because there's no other option.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And that leads to difficult decisions about the collection.
Correct.
Yeah.
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 Weeding is very difficult.
Yeah, weeding is physically painful as a
Yes.
reader.
As a librarian, as a reader, as a book lover, it's very, very, very hard. Yeah.
But it's one of those decisions that you do have to make. I was tasked with weeding the library where I worked, and it hadn't been weeded. It hadn't really been weeded well, I think, in ever. And it hadn't been weeded in a very long time, because one of the books that I weeded out, and I actually argued for including it in the historical section, had not been checked out since before I was born.
I understand that. I removed some books just like that over here. Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if we put it in the historical books, because we did have a small section of books that were 100+ years old, and we didn't check them out any longer. It was if you wanted them as reference, you used them there at the library. But you have to make those decisions, and it gets very difficult. I know with my library, my boss kind of gave me loose parameters, and then we refined them as we got into the weeding project. But we had a recent expansion. So we had gone from the original library there in New England had been a one-room schoolhouse.
Oh my goodness.
So very old building, 1700s era.
Oh wow.
And then they had built on a large expansion just a couple years before I got there, so they actually had space for the collections, even space to expand had been planned in. But it still needed weeded, because one of the things we were looking at was wear and tear on books.
Right.
Because there are things like Peanuts collections, and I'm sure this is still the case. They get loved to death. They fall apart.
Yes.
Any comic books for the kids were...
Right.
Yeah. So...
They come in and pages are falling out.
Yep.
Yep.
And then you make the decision, do you replace it or just weed it out entirely? But usually if they're being that loved and checked out...
You have to replace them,
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is with some of those is that the cost of those books, because sometimes they're out of print, is crazy expensive. So
Yeah.
At least in our mind of what's affordable for us.
Well, yeah. But I think that a librarian, especially for a small town, is going to be similar to just a general reader in their perception of what a book should and shouldn't cost.
Right. Absolutely.
And ebooks are a whole other thing for libraries, and not always in a good way.
Right. Well,
So.
I mean, because our expense on an ebook is 3 times the expense of a book on the shelf.
Yes.
Well,
And so that makes it more difficult.
Because of the way traditional publishing prices library ebooks.
not even necessarily that. So we expanded some of our stuff out to Kobo, which distributes to Overdrive. And when you click the thing to say yes, I want to be included in libraries, they won't let you price it below a certain point, and it's at least twice, but they recommend at least 3 times the cost of a regular ebook.
Why?
Just because that's how I suspect it's got. Thank you.
It's like Ian's fidget toys.
I suspect it's guidelines from Overdrive itself, but like that's a like as an indie putting my stuff up to be distributed, and I'm very glad that I can.
Sure.
But also it's like I don't want to soak the local libraries, which is why I will come and hand you a stack of my books.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to say, hey,
here's the ebooks.
Here's the ebooks.
Now
you can't do that.
But I can't.
Now the ebooks that your library has are not through Overdrive, I don't believe.
No, they are. They're all through
Oh,
Overdrive.
it is Overdrive. Okay.
That's the only ebooks we have.
Because I know that it's the name of it was not the same, but I also had noted that when I went looking for certain things, it's a limited collection. That there's some things just don't seem to be available. Older books are,
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at older traditionally published books. Like I was looking for can't remember the name of the author, and I've met her and she's lovely. Faith does the Kate Daniels books. Faith Hunter, yes. Yeah. I was looking for Faith Hunter's books, and they're just not there. And I'm going to guess that they're old enough that they have been checked out enough times, and there's only so many checkouts allowed, and then they go away.
That happens with some of the books, not all of them, but yeah, a lot of the ebooks are that way. They're metered access. So.
Yeah.
Which makes it really
then
difficult
we have to
for you.
repurchase.
Yeah. Yeah, and there isn't a way for you to get around using Overdrive, is there? No.
Not really.
Yeah.
Like I really wish, like I would absolutely go to every author I know, and like, okay, thumb drive, put your stuff on here.
I've actually done that, but it wasn't for libraries. It was for the Baen book drive. So Baen Publishing used to do a book drive for. They would send boxes full of their books, of the books that they published, to people that were on deployment, to bases.
What a great idea.
Yeah, and they would just ship like boxes and boxes of books, and a lot of servicemen read Baen because they would be out there somewhere and on deployment and bored out of their minds, and this box of books would show up, and they learned to really appreciate what Baen publishes. But then every year we would do these special book drives, fundraising for getting books to wounded warriors, to Walter Reed, to the hospitals. And when ebooks really became a big thing in e-readers, we'd do a fundraising drive to buy e-readers, and then we would load them with books. And I would literally like send all of whatever I had in print at the time, because it's been a few years. And to be loaded onto these e-readers to be given to guys that were convalescing in the hospitals. And that way, especially guys that couldn't handle a physical book.
I was just going to say that'd be easier to...
Yeah, and with e-readers, you have those options of making your fonts bigger. So if you have vision issues, nice big fonts, you can change your background colors. That helps, again, with vision issues. And if you've got limited mobility, you don't have to physically hold a book and turn pages.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a great thing. There are benefits to ebooks.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
And I know a lot of people are still, they want a physical book, and I understand it, and I certainly collect enough of them.
There's my book, I've got a mouth works eventually. Some of my bookcases that I have, and I'm still in the process of moving my book collection from Denver to Wichita Falls. I consider it a trophy case because I read the book in ebook, but I have my physical copy right there.
Yeah.
So it's there, and I can look at it.
There you go.
And if I need to lend it to somebody, I can, take their credit card, and they can, And when they return it, they get it back.
It feels like that.
Kind of like a library card,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I used to do that with pens, because I would go to work with a pocket full of pens. And I was down to my last two. I'm like, okay, driver's license. What? no, you get the driver's license back when I get my pen back. I'm gonna use it right here. Yeah, and you're gonna get the driver's license back when I get my pen back. Oh, okay. Why? This is my last one, and I get tips.
Oh. So I know. So the anthologies are a good way for you to have earned money with the library. I'm actually wondering if that's something that would be viable for other librarians to do. If you think that that's a project that librarians could take on, or
It depends on how much help they have. I'm very fortunate for the library of our size, I have 4 part-time staff. So I have plenty of staff to do things while I take care of other things that are going on. But there are a lot of libraries for the size of our town and smaller who they may be the only staff, or there may only be one other staff.
Right.
And so I just don't know that they'd have the time. But if they had an active writers group like we do, I couldn't have done this without y'all's help, without Jim's help.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And so if there's enough help from the people involved, I think anybody could do it. And I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah. Which is another argument for getting authors involved in their local libraries too, is to be able to help with stuff like this. Yeah.
And the reason that we have a writers group at our library is because Jim came in and talked to me and gave me his books, and then I had several other authors locally that were doing it, and nobody knew each other.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is a strange. Let's just do this and see. We'll just see. We met at noon the first time we met, and everybody was very excited about it, to have that place where they could meet and talk, and then we built it from there. But I'm grateful for. And I had somebody come in just the other day and ask, "Do you know anywhere where I could go that's like a writers group or something?" And I was like,
"We have one."
As a matter of fact, I could hook you up.
And that's fantastic. No, and I mean, the writing group at this library is unusual in that we do have. We have a publisher, and we've got editors, and we've got authors, and sometimes all of those things in one person. And so, but I think that it's one of those things that being willing to have the writers group there definitely helps, and hopefully brings some resources to you as a librarian.
Yeah, you guys have been super helpful, just in general.
How many authors do we hear talk about? I don't know how to network and connect with the resources that I need. And it's not always, I mean, I know that a lot of people talk to me about their writing groups not being necessarily healthy for them as a writer, and I certainly can see that happening. So that's something that's having someone that is being observant and watchful of that kind of thing helps.
Well, one of the things I ran into in Colorado, most of the writers groups I checked out were a bunch of people who'd never written anything telling other people who'd never written anything how to write.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's not.
And it wasn't helpful, or it was people who they'd written one book, or they'd written like 5 books 20 years ago and nothing since, and they were the
sorry.
Yes. I wasn't going to mention the sci-fi writers group that I walked into, looked at everybody and walked out. Because there are people who have done stuff but don't know what's current, and will argue with you about they will argue with you about your grammar points, but won't tell you help you tell a good story. It won't help you get into the market. Won't tell you keep each other informed on what's coming up. Like if they hey, because Alyssa hands out, this is what's open, this is contests and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
When we get there, and people are like, no, don't tell anybody about open calls because I won in that one, and I'm like,
no, that's not
how this works.
Yeah,
right.
Not how this works. So,
or they'll rip your stuff apart just because they feel like they have to say something, and it's not their thing. Like I write nothing but mysteries, and so I'm going to bag on your historical thriller because it doesn't match any of the things I think a historical thriller should have. I know nothing about it, but I feel like I have to say something and to prove to you what kind of a person I am. And it's like, well, you've just proved to me that you're an idiot.
Yeah. Sometimes the review says more about the reviewer than it does about the book.
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
But we've done some good stuff with the writers group, the times I'm able to make it, because granted, I'm not.
The other thing we've had fun about, I don't think we ever told Amy what we did. So the book sale last year, I came in and I bought books, and I bought a couple of the paper bags that you put together of books for, was it like $5?
The grab bags.
The grab
it was
bags.
$1.
$1.
Yep.
For all these books. And the inner book-deprived child in me went, squee! Even though I knew I didn't have time. So I had grabbed one that was mystery books, because that one I thought I would actually get around to reading, and one for romance books for reference reading, because hanging out with a romance author, I was thinking I should dabble a little, but I need to know more. But we wound up getting 2 of those grab bags from the book sale, and sitting here on recording with Jonna, and Jonna would pull a book out and show us the cover, and then we'd tell her what was in the book, and then we'd read the blurb together. And we were
How fun.
It was so hysterical.
It was what the covers were. We could tell pretty much what era they were in.
Yeah.
What the cover was saying about decade. What kind of book it was. Why, what niche it fit into. Whether it's a modern niche, or where we thought it would have fit. And it was interesting.
Well, because I do the cover art and design, so for me it was one of those things of I'm kind of honing my skills by doing that, but we were just having a blast.
We had so much fun.
So that was definitely one of those things that we meant to appreciate, and tell you that was a really great mixture of choice in those bags.
Thank you. I made all those bags.
Yeah,
we wondered about that.
Because I try to, when I'm picking things for those bags, I'm always trying to get rid of things that just are not selling.
Right.
But I try to throw a few that are, like, maybe we have 2 or 3 copies of that one. But it's a good book.
Yeah.
We'll throw that in there, too.
Yeah.
Just try to mix it up so you're not getting...
Book sales are a challenge, because you wind up with books that just sit there forever and never go anywhere. And I know my boss at the library, it was in anguish about this, because we actually had the fire marshal come in and tell us that there was an old back stair that was never used, and it had boxes of books stacked all up it, because we had all these books for the book sale, and no place else to store them. And the fire marshal was like, that is an access stair, and even if you never use it, it has to be accessible, so all the books have to go away.
Oh no.
So my boss is like, the option here is to take them to the landfill, which he did not want to do. And what he wound up doing was he went online and found this company that bought books by the pound, and it was like they sent us a bunch of boxes, and we were like knee deep in boxes behind the circulation counter for a while. Packed all these boxes up and sent them off, and I don't know how much they paid. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but mostly what it was is my boss was like, they need to go to a good home.
I used to call Goodwill to come pick up books after they come pick up our boxes of books after the book sale. But now that we have the little house that we can keep them in, we keep most of them. I don't. I just got lucky this last book sale. We had 3 different people that sell books online come in and buy $100 worth of books.
Oh, wonderful!
Which, when you're selling them a quarter a piece, that's a lot of books.
Yeah, it is.
So down the street from my apartment in Aurora, there's an ARC that I love. Because actually there's 3 of them, but I go to this one specifically because this is one where all the estate sales drop off the books at the end. And I walked in one time, and it was somebody's entire collection of science fiction and fantasy.
Oh my gosh!
Going back to the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they were going for 50 cents, 75 cents a piece, and I spent $100.
Just gonna say, how much money did you spend?
The receipt was longer than I was, and the only reason I didn't buy more is I couldn't fit the rest of my car. I couldn't get the magazines that were on the end cap. Like, oh no! So I went back in, and like a couple days later, and they were gone.
Yeah.
Somebody else saw it, like 50 years of Asimov's. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
So like I've
I walked
Yeah.
into a local thrift shop and was puttering around. It was the first time I'd been in there. It was a junk shop, very dusty and lovely, because those are the kinds of places where you find treasures.
Right.
And I'm walking along and I looked down. There was this low bookshelf and it had stuff up on top of it. And I looked down and there's one entire 3-foot shelf of Edgar Rice Burroughs books. And I'm like, how much? And she's like, per book? And I'm like, no, for all of them. So it was like $30 for a 3-foot section of Edgar Rice Burroughs books.
Because you see these things and you're like, I don't know how much that's worth monetarily, but I know how much that's worth to me as a collector and a fan. And
Absolutely.
So, and the reason Edgar Rice Burroughs is special to me actually relates to the library in Alaska, where I was, we moved up there and I was 9, and I was a pretty precocious reader. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to this library for years, and I went through like everything in the children's section, and the librarian would not let me go over into the adult section of the library.
Oh no.
So I was desperate for more reading material, so she opened up the closet into the back room behind the children's section, which had the books that were old and had been pulled off the shelf, but they hadn't gotten rid of them, which included an entire collection of Edgar Rice Burroughs books. So I read all of Edgar Rice Burroughs books because I wasn't allowed to go in the
I mean, when you said that, it hurt my heart, because I was like, as a reader myself that ran out of books when I was young. Of course, they didn't have YA and all that when I was younger.
No, they didn't.
And so if somebody said you
can't
can't read adult, I would just be devastated, because that's what I read.
I had a special note letting me check out books from the adult section.
I'll bring my mom with me. She said I could.
Because I refused to take naps. So my mom said if I could read to myself quietly, I could read a book. And she didn't think I could read. Well, she learned. And so I was allowed to check out as many books as I could carry without a bag. So, and we went up like every other day. And I would take back all books. And then when I got a bike and the library was 3 miles away,
Wow.
I got baskets for my bike, and all of a sudden I could pick out more books.
The library was 5 miles away, and I would bike in with a backpack for the books.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Biking in alongside the Alaska Highway, so...
Seems a little scary, but okay. Yeah. I understand the need for books, though.
Yes.
I learned interlibrary alone because they wouldn't. I'm like, I read through the entire children's section. She's like, no, you can't. She's like, you haven't read everything here. And I'm like, yes, I have. She's like, well, not these. I'm like, we don't have all the books in that collection. So she showed me how to do the interlibrary alone. And so I read I read the entire series up to everything that had been published at that point. And I said, can I read the adult books now?
Yeah.
So you're in 3rd grade. I
was a teenager before I encountered the miracle that is interlibrary alone.
Oh my God, it was wonderful.
I didn't know about it until I went to work for the library. I mean, I knew it existed, knew it existed, but had never experienced it or used it prior to that, just because.
It was something I taught. We had some kids, my core cadre of readers, and so I taught some of them that it existed and how to use it, because they would read faster than we could acquire books for them.
Right.
And we might have part of a series, and I wanted them to read the whole series. Right. So you teach them how to use it, and then they do. But it's also good because it's good circulation numbers, not only for you but the other libraries too.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's always fun to see the interlibrary loan van pull up and come in with a bucket of books. And what have we got now?
That's awesome.
Yeah, if I could get more books, I found ways to get more books. Like, for a while there, Walmart was doing a bunch of classics. They were 2 for $1.
Oh, wow.
And so I got Wind in the Willows. That's where I got my Scarlet Pimpernel. My first copy of the Scarlet Pimpernel. The Three Musketeers, the Count of Monte Cristo. Like, if it was a Harvard, if it was a Penguin Classic or a Harvard Classic, they had it was really cheap print, really cheap,
and abridged too, if I recall correctly. No,
these were not abridged.
Oh wow!
That was one of the things because the Three Musketeers, I'm like, all right, where? Because I knew the spots they would pull out, because I'd gotten an abridged copy, and I'm like, this is bullshit. So I went and got. I'm like, okay, it's this abridged. Like, it's unabridged, but it was super cheap cover, super cheap everything.
Yeah.
Right.
But they were 2 for $1.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I got like everything I could get in that,
Mm-hmm.
and I haunted the Friends of the Library sales and the, come buy a bag for,
Yeah. Library book sales were always a boon for me as a young reader. So, the Scarlet Pimpernel reminds me of, she had assigned our
yes.
writing Discord to read the Scarlet Pimpernel, because there can be an argument made that it's the first superhero story.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I was curious, does the library have a book club?
Yeah, we do have a book club right now, but the only book club we have, because it was our kickoff book club, is the Love Book Club, and we do romance novels.
Oh, fun!
And it meets on the. So it meets on
When
the.
does it meet? Okay.
It meets on the 4th Tuesday of every month.
Okay.
Tuesday
So-
in the evening? Okay.
At 7:00. And that'll start in
January?
January. Thank
Yeah.
you. And we will. I don't know what we're reading yet for
Okay.
January. I'm trying to
Okay.
get that figured out.
Okay.
But it has been a lot of fun. Like
Yeah.
you don't realize how many people, because so many people are shamed for reading romance, which I think is ridiculous, because
Yes.
who cares as long as you're reading? That's
I have
what
rants.
makes you happy.
And
Yes.
statistically, romance is this huge genre, so a lot of people are reading it.
Yes.
And if you want to get people engaged at the library, why not
Yeah.
do romance?
It's been a big success. The only other, we have a book talk group that meets at lunchtime on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, and that's just where people come and talk about whatever they're reading. There's no assigned book, but it's been a lot of fun doing, and we've read books that I absolutely love, and we've read books that I didn't want to finish.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different every month, and so far it's been really good. This month for December we moved our meeting up. That's why in December, but it's going to be the 3rd Tuesday. We're reading Kathy's book,
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I can't remember the name of it.
Oh.
Anyway, it's the Christmas one.
Yeah. No.
Before Christmas, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I bought it.
Anyway.
I have not finished reading it. But yeah, no, because I was talking to her at the craft fair, so I was like, I must buy one of your books. But it's one of those genres that there's some I like and some I don't, so it's interesting. But again, it's huge, so there's going to be something for everybody eventually.
That's what I think.
So
So
yeah. Because I know when I was doing the book club as a librarian, I tried not to push books at the group, but there was one that I actually did suggest and they chose, and I was really glad when we sat down to discuss it, because we did Dashiell Hammett's Maltese Falcon.
Oh,
And we had a 95-year-old lady in the book club, and she had been to see the movie when it premiered. So we basically spent the whole book club time listening to her reminisce about going to see this movie.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, no, it was wonderful.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, it was, and there was some books I read for that I was like, I don't know about this, but trying to let them pick what they wanted and thought, rather than me saying, we're going to read this.
And that's sort of with the romance book club so far, is that it started out with me picking or Kathy picking, and it was because, and I'll be honest, I was picking books that we could afford to buy.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to supply. I try to make everything that happens at the library as low cost or no cost if possible.
Yes.
And so I was trying to pick books that were on sale, and then I took a poll one day when we were all sitting there and said, all right, who has Kindle Unlimited? Because this will free me up a lot if we, and almost everybody in the group has it.
Right,
We have
I do.
2 people that don't.
Yeah.
So it's a lot cheaper to just buy one book that 2 people can share than to have to buy 15 books or whatever it was. At the beginning it was 15. We're down to about 10 now, but still.
That's still a
It's
good
so much
turnout
fun.
for the size of
It really
town.
is.
Yeah.
It really is. So I've thought about doing other genres and seeing just because doing a specific genre seems to, because you're attracting those readers.
Yes.
And I'll read anything once and maybe more than once.
Yes. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. There's a few things that I know I don't like, and I won't really. I'm going to say I'm not a fan of horror, but that's actually too sweeping, and I'm not a fan of like slasher gratuitous horror.
I would agree with that. But a good scare every now and then.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on board for it. Yeah.
A really well written, tight psychological thriller. I'm good with that.
Right.
But it's the ick you that I'm not a fan.
No.
And I'm not a big fan of books that are super heavy into the occult stuff.
Yeah.
So I find that kind of creepy. But again, that's a me thing. So, but other than that, I will read anything. It used to be anything with print on it I would read, and unfortunately I don't have enough time anymore. So
yes, I understand that.
I'm sitting here going, can I work in another book club? Because but I have 2 books I have to finish this month. So
once upon a time that would have been for me a couple of days worth of reading, but I'm
sitting here going, okay, because I'm doing the sci-fi fantasy book club. It has The Last Unicorn as our first book, and that's January 2nd. I'm like, okay, I have 2 books I have to have finished. Well, no, a book and a short story, and I think the second novel I should anyway.
You have books you have to write.
I have books I have to write. Well, yeah, I have one I have to finish. I have 2 books I have to finish writing, a short story I have to finish writing before the end of the year. So I don't know if I can work in another book in there, but
think about it.
I'm thinking
because
about it.
Because then one month we could do one of your books, and then you're there.
Yeah.
Because I kind of love that. I mean, Kathy's super nervous about it, but I'm so excited for her to be there while we talk about her book.
I would love to do like a guest interview for our book club or something, just to go in and talk about my books.
Yeah, because I was actually one of the things that I set up as a librarian was we actually did a video conference with I can't remember the author's name anymore, but he wrote a series of very funny mysteries starring Flavia de Luce.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that's it.
And we set up a video conference, right? And that was fun.
That's cool. It's so much fun to talk to the author.
Yeah, and I mean, the book club that we had there was mostly ladies. We had one gentleman that came from time to time. And like I said, we had a 95-year-old, and she was the oldest, but not by a whole lot.
Wow.
So, and these lovely little old Yankee ladies, and they got to chatting, and it was just fun to sit there and listen to them, honestly. Mm-hmm. But, it was a lot of history in that room when they got together.
That's awesome.
One of my first jobs was working for the first small press I worked for. My job was to set up interviews for the authors when they were doing releases on their book, and so I would start with their local libraries, and then anybody who's willing to do a phone call or a video call.
Yeah,
I think I called 200 or 300 bookstores, libraries, places that had indicated some kind of interest.
Right.
And that was a lot of calling. I was glad I had free long distance on my phone.
Yeah. And these days, I mean, it's almost gotten harder in some ways to do publicity because we don't have a local paper anymore here in town.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for everybody with
yeah. And Facebook is only so good. I mean, it's pretty throttled and limited usually. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think sometimes I see library posts, but not all the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a challenge for you to get the word out of something that's going on.
We try to, because social media is basically our only way to get things out now, is that we try to do, I try to get everybody to subscribe to our page, obviously, follow us. Right. But I've also done a Iowa Park community events page, and I always tell people I put as much as I can on there from the library, from the city, from everywhere in the community. So just check it, not hope it shows up in your feed. Check the page, because that's the only way you're going to see everything.
Do you have a newsletter? Do you have a newsletter?
I don't.
We probably should talk about that.
Yeah.
Because having an email that goes out to people rather than having them check might be a good thing for you.
I have a way to send them to everybody that's got an email on file with us within the library through my system. It's just a matter of putting the newsletter together.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things.
So
that
it has been something that we've been kind of
going back and forth,
tossed it around a few
Yeah.
times, but I kind of need to update my system too. I might not have done a delete for a while, but you know,
it happens.
Yeah, cleaning up databases is a constant chore, and it's never a fun chore.
No.
So,
and sometimes it's one of those things that it doesn't need to be done right now. So, and you've got so many other things that need to be done sooner, so it gets pushed back.
And we're always so busy.
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, we have taken enough of Amy's time for tonight, I think.
Oh goodness, yes. It was it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. So
This was great. And thank you very much. It gives us a really good insight into libraries, and I think not only the two of us, but a lot of our readers are very interested in this because we've got people that have families and use libraries, and the authors, of course, could be a resource to their libraries.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be good for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all the programs that we have for writers at the library started because Jim came in and talked to me one day and said, I'm a local author, can I give you my books?
Yeah.
And then more started, and it built from there. So.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate being here and talking. I enjoyed this conversation so much.
Excellent. Well, we never get a chance to actually talk at the stuff because you're always so busy,
right?
So, which is good.
And we will put links in the description to the Haunted Library anthologies, Tales from the Oil Patch, and the children's book as well. So, because I know, like I said, I know we've got people that listen that have kids and families, and I actually am thinking about it. My cousin just had a baby, so it's a little early yet, but for a gift going down the road,
that's right.
So,
but homeschool resources, we're constantly having people ask for.
Yes, I actually on
goods.
my Discord, I have a specific channel that is homeschool resources, and I can definitely throw this in there.
So the shape book you can go to the Dollar Tree and buy all the things that are in the book.
Yeah.
So you can make your own little shape basket to go along with the story if you want to.
Yeah, because absolutely doing the kinetic stuff is important. It's all part of the learning in the different modalities. So
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much. And,
thanks you for coming in, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we will see you at the library.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.